everyone. My name is Jana McDonald. I am a career advisor with the Experiential Learning Hub, and I'm very happy to say that we're doing another career spotlight, this time in the field of international development. And before we jump into our speaker, I'm just going to have the two students who are joining me today that are going to help facilitate this conversation introduce themselves. Jordan, do you want to begin?
Sure. My name's Jordan. I'm in fourth year of international development with an area of emphasis in environment and development.
Hi, I'm Emma. I'm in the second year of my international development program with an emphasis on development in the Canadian context.
Awesome, thank you. And then our guest speaker today that we have is Allie Reddon. Happy to say that she is a former University of Guelph student, so she is one of our alumni. So Allie, we'll start the conversation just if you wouldn't mind sharing with us your background. So what have you been up to since you graduated?
Yeah, of course. So hi, everyone. Yeah, again, my name's Allie Reddon, and I took the International Development undergrad program at Guelph and loved it. I did my area of emphasis in gender and development, so I took a lot of women's studies course. I also did a minor in anthropology and a certificate in business. So I added a little bit of extra studies to my degree, and it really helped me sort of land where I am now. But since graduation, I've had a few really incredible personal and professional development opportunities with different non-government and nonprofit organizations. So I started out with a volunteer position with a small organization called Girls 20, where I was sort of helping in all areas of their work, but specifically with community outreach and building out one of their programs and helping with the Girls Belong Here program, or the Girls on Board program, sorry. And then following that, I landed a Canada Summer Jobs Program internship with War Child Canada. So I was working with War Child for 4 months, just over 4 months, doing a fundraising activation, a summer events and community support internship as well with them. And that was really wonderful. I kind of got to work on their creative partnerships. I got to tie in some of my personal passions for music and performing and art with international development and fundraising. And that was really cool. And just as my internship was wrapping up, I got hired into my first full-time permanent position with Plan International Canada. And there I've had a few different experiences as well, bumping around within the philanthropy department and the fundraising side of things.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you've actually had like 3 different jobs since graduation, all in kind of this international nonprofit sector, which, yeah, congratulations. I always support these like little wins, and that was one of the reasons as I was kind of looking through your profile on LinkedIn, I'm like, wow, she's landed not 1, not 2, but 3 opportunities since graduation. So that's great.
Yeah.
All right, so you're welcome. We're going to begin just with some questions from the students that have joined us today. And so Emma, if you'd like to begin.
Yeah, international development can be applied to so many different, branches of the professional world and industries. And I just was curious as to what drew you to work with Plan International and just in the nonprofit sector in general.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I was someone who was always really passionate about travel, first of all. So a lot of travel opportunities with my family when I was younger, and then independently between school semesters allowed me to experience many different cultures and many different, international experiences, I guess you could say. And through my travels, I just started to really long for a better understanding of some of the complex issues that we see across communities around the world. So that's kind of what led me to choose studying international development in the first place. And then it was actually through my undergrad and some of the extracurricular things that I was doing and some of the clubs I was involved in and some of the courses I was taking, where I really started to have kind of an idea of where within the world of international development I was interested in working. So taking into consideration, my area of emphasis in gender, my passion for girls' rights and including women in decision-making spaces, It sort of led me to research organizations that aligned with those personal interests and passions, because there's so much in the nonprofit space, from healthcare to environment, and then to things like human rights and social justice and gender equality. So I honed into my personal passions and then really looked towards organizations that held similar missions and values, and started to research and put myself out there and inquire about opportunities, and that's sort of how I ended up pursuing a career in the nonprofit space, and specifically at Plan, because their mission just really aligns with my personal interests in this area.
Wow, that's an awesome story. As international development students, we all kind of know that there's like really good parts and bad parts with development. So like, what would you say is like the toughest, like the best and the toughest part of the work that you do?
So with my job, I work in fundraising. So when I think of the way sort of Plan International Canada operates and how a lot of different organizations operate, you have your programmatic side where you're really building out the programs, providing the solutions, working closely with the communities where the work is being done. And then you also have the development side, and this is where the fundraising side comes in. We have to fund the programs that are happening. And so with fundraising, it's really challenging to go out and ask people for money, especially in the international space, to support communities that they don't necessarily have a direct tie to. I think when we think of corporate partnerships and other types of fundraising, it's a lot easier for people to justify supporting the communities where they live and where they work. So I think a big challenge to the job that I do in fundraising and managing and engaging various donors at different levels is helping donors feel connected to the international work that the organization does. And it's really through just getting to learn a little bit more about them personally, and learning about, whether it's a company or an individual who's looking to support one of our programs, why they are interested in supporting it and how we can make them feel connected to the work that's happening on the ground. So even though it's a challenge, it's also one of the best parts of my jobs, because it allows me to not just, ask people to help fund our programs, but really draw back on the total impact that each dollar can have, and start to explain, the meaningful contributions that are given, and where that dollar is being spent, and the total impact that it has on the communities we support. And then you see the switch turn on for the donor as well, like to feel connected to the work in the field, and to get a video response or photos from the field, and really kind of understand what their gift is doing is really rewarding for me and for the donor themselves.
It must be. And I know because you work in fundraising, you've probably got to work on a variety of different projects, which is really, really interesting. But if you could choose, what has been your favorite project with Plan International Canada?
So that's a really hard question, because Plan works in such a variety of different thematic areas. So, we do child protection work, education, water and sanitation, health, economic empowerment. The list goes on. There's all these incredible initiatives. We also, do sponsoring of specific children. We have our Because I Am a Girl campaign. So there's just this vast plethora of different projects and programs. I personally feel very connected to education programming. A lot of our education programming has a focus on ensuring that girls have opportunities to learn. And as we all know, education is important for everybody, but there's an emphasis on putting girls in school and providing them with opportunities to learn due to, the setbacks that they face, and cultural, socioeconomic setbacks that they face across the world. So, there's some really cool education programming. There's one specific one I'm thinking of, if I have to boil it down, that I got to discuss with some of our donors last year and this year about integrated education programming for girls in northeastern Nigeria. So it's sort of an area where a lot of refugees who've gone through some struggles with Boko Haram insurgencies have fled to. And in this community, not only do we provide girls with the opportunity to catch up with school that they may have missed, but there's also an aspect of the program that focuses on psychosocial support. And I think that's really important for a lot of vulnerable women and girls who've gone through trauma, to not only just focus on getting them the health they need in the education, but the mental health and the psychosocial support that might allow them to better perform in school or at work. So that's just one project, but there's so many. Yeah, hopefully that answered.
That's incredible. That sounds like an awesome project to be like working on. To kind of switch gears here, as someone in fourth year, that's kind of looking into jobs and everything. What are some of the examples of entry-level positions with your organizations that students might be able to target upon graduation?
Yeah, that's a good question, Jordan. To kind of answer that, I guess I'll go back to what I was doing when I was in fourth year and approaching the end of my degree. So I have this like vivid memory of sitting on the third floor of the library in a cubicle. It just like my finals were approaching and I was getting ready to wrap up a semester, and I was like, what is going to happen after this? You know, I'd worked summer jobs, and my summer jobs were always like serving at a restaurant and not necessarily in the field that I was hoping to pursue a career in. So I was looking towards the end of my degree, and there was this big kind of daunting thing about finding work related to my degree right away and get all established. But I knew it wasn't going to come easy, and I knew that in the nonprofit space, funds are limited, right? When you think about these incredible programs that need funding, you realize that they don't necessarily have a lot to offer to employees, and they necessarily don't have the space to hire in full capacity, permanent, full-time employees all the time. So I was kind of open-minded going into my job search. And as I was wrapping up my undergrad, I was trying to be open-minded and think about, okay, I could serve 3 nights a week and also volunteer for an organization I'm really, really passionate about, you know? So I'd do my side hustle, my regular part-time job, and then I would just pour my days into volunteering. If there was no paid opportunity for me right away, I was open-minded to volunteering. So that's how I got started with Girls 20. I just looked up gender equality, organizations that had really cool teams of powerhouse women and powerhouse, leaders. And I was just interested in learning more from them and working for them, even if it meant without a paycheck for a while. And so that's what I did with Girls 20. And that was a good way to get involved. I just emailed probably about 6 or 7 different organizations, went on their websites and looked for their info at emails and sent them just an email saying I'm going to be a recent grad in just a month or two, and I'm really interested in learning more about what your organization does and how I could potentially get involved. And I was really glad when they emailed me back and said, why don't you come into our office in Toronto and we can chat about how you could get involved. And then, yeah, they offered me this volunteer position to come into their office 3 or 4 days a week and really support their work in all areas. And the amount that I learned from that team was just so great. And they were a really small nonprofit. Plan is like 300 employees, and Girls 20 was 5 employees at the time. So it was really great experience to be sitting so closely with the CEO and the programs director in this small room and be able to hear their ideas and, just soak in as much as I could as a volunteer. So very entry level would be volunteer, but entry level paid positions. What happened to me after my volunteer experience was I got hired as a summer intern. So Canada Summer Jobs Program looks to charities and nonprofits to provide opportunities for students graduating from programs like ours. The opportunity to work for organizations who wouldn't necessarily have the funding to hire interns. So War Child was granted this Canada Summer Jobs Program cash to hire someone on. And I was really excited about the job that was posted. And the internship that was posted because it tied in music, and I play guitar and I love to sing. And so not only did I get to fundraise for an incredible international development organization working in post-conflict zones around the world, but I also got to go to this incredible concert activation where we fundraised over $80,000 that summer for the organization. And it was just really cool. Like really cool Canadian bands are performing and people are giving us support, and it was a really rewarding summer job. But it had a deadline. The internship came to a close, and the organization didn't have capacity to keep me on full time. And so I hit the job boards again and started applying and writing out cover letters. So yeah, I would just look for internships and volunteer opportunities. I know at Plan, it's a very large organization. So if you're looking into large organizations, look to their donor support teams. So we have a donor care team. It's kind of like a call center. They do hire a lot of recent grads, and a lot of those people who work in sort of the call center to answer donor inquiries move on to other positions within the organization. You know, once you kind of have a foot in the door, being bumped around internally happens. It's happened to me now a couple times since I started at Plan. And so, you know, just getting your foot in the door allows you the opportunity to move laterally and into, you know, new positions within an organization.
I know Jordan mentioned, you know, as a fourth year student, you know, she's looking forward to what it's going to look like after graduation. I know for me too, I'm in the new co-op portion of the program, and you know, a lot of us are interested in that nonprofit, those nonprofit opportunities. So just to kind of hear more about what it was like as you started to apply for jobs in the nonprofit sector. What was the job market like, and were there a lot of opportunities when you started applying?
Well, first of all, that's amazing to hear that there's a co-op aspect to the iDev program. That's huge because that didn't exist when I was going through my undergrad there. And I think it's just such an amazing opportunity for you to get practical experience on your resume before you graduate. So that's really awesome to hear that that's been implemented, and exciting for you, Emma, to be able to take advantage of that. So yeah, I mean, I kind of answered a little bit of this question in my previous one, just in terms of the research that I was doing as I was kind of looking to jobs and looking to this job market in the nonprofit space. So for me, it was really about personal interest and passion. I was Googling organizations that I thought I would, you know, really resonate with their mission. And then I was reaching out to even if there was no job posting, I was reaching out to the organization anyways to see if there was any opportunities. In terms of looking at job boards, you know, if you have organizations in mind, you know, start a short list of the ones you think are doing really great work, and then always check back on their opportunities pages. LinkedIn was really, really helpful for me. I started building up my LinkedIn profile while I was in my undergrad, you know, adding all my extracurriculars and some of the things I was involved in, conferences I went to. And then once I graduated, it was nice to have that already there. And it's also a really great job search engine in the nonprofit space. A lot of resources are shared on a LinkedIn community. And then the job market for international development jobs, it can seem like slim pickings at times. So I would just say don't get discouraged and keep checking back. You know, apply to things even if you think you're slightly underqualified, because even if you get selected for an interview, you might not get the job, but even going through that process is really great practice. I had an interview with UNICEF for this really big corporate partnerships fundraising job, and this was following my War Child internship. And I had like no experience really in that area to be chosen for that job, but it was an amazing experience to go to the UNICEF office, meet people, you know, have this learning opportunity where I could speak to these really experienced fundraisers. And even though I kind of knew leaving the interview that day that I wasn't going to be selected, it was really cool to have even, you know, had my resume go across someone's desk and learn about that opportunity a bit more. So yeah, apply for as many opportunities as you can that you think are of interest, and really just kind of keep a short list of organizations that you're interested in mind, and just check back with them and reach out to them and see how you can get involved.
You kind of mentioned it briefly there about updating your LinkedIn as you had experiences in your undergrad. So what would you say are some of the biggest, like, what kind of experiences did you have in your undergrad, like with like maybe on campus volunteering or like clubs that you think helped you succeed in your job applications?
Yeah, well, I have one incredible example. I wish I had like 10, because if I had had more time, although I know how challenging a school can be, I would have loved to join more clubs and learn from more students who are doing similar work. But in the very first week of O Week of my first year at Guelph, I was walking around and I was walking around campus, and they had a bunch of different events happening for the first years. And on Johnson Green, they had subs and clubs, and you could go pick up a free Subway sandwich and walk around. And they had all these little booths set up for different clubs on campus. And there was one with a massive globe on their poster. So I just was like, I had just traveled a little bit in the summer with my family, and I was so, interested in travel opportunities as a student, whether it was a semester abroad or learning more about international development, nonprofits on campus or what that would look like. And it ended up being this club called AIESEC, AIESEC. So I don't know if you've heard of them. They were definitely super, super active on campus at the time that I was studying. And they had been around in Guelph for a while, but across Canadian universities for a very, very long time. And they're actually the world's largest student-run nonprofit. So they're in over 70 countries around the world. And it was really, really cool to get involved with them sort of straight from first year, because I had such an incredible opportunity to grow within the organization and learn throughout my undergrad. So a little bit more about what they do is they facilitate international internships. So they were sending Guelph students abroad on volunteer and paid work opportunities for the summer and just throughout the year. And also they were receiving interns from countries all around the world coming to Guelph for opportunities to work with local businesses. And when I joined, I got kind of looped into their incoming exchange team. They were like, hey, Allie, you're kind of bubbly and you seem like you like to talk a lot. So we're going to throw you on our incoming exchange team, and you're going to help cold call businesses in Guelph and try and get them to take on an international intern. And we're looking for engineering internships and business administration internships and marketing internships. So good luck. And here's the list of the Guelph Business Chamber of Commerce. And then I also had opportunities to go to conferences with this organization and learn about how to, conduct cold calls and speak with businesses and pitch programming. And, all of it was for youth, young people who were going on these internships for personal and professional development, which I was also experiencing just by doing this volunteer work for this student-run nonprofit. So I got involved with AIESEC, and I was just originally a member on that team. I went on to manage that team of 5 people. Then I got elected as one of the VPs for the Guelph chapter, where I managed a team and another team of 5 people, so 10 people, until I then ran and was elected for the local committee president, where I managed a team of 30 Guelph students who were helping operate basically as a mini nonprofit. So we had our talent and culture team, or who was like HR team, basically. So they helped with recruitment and bringing new student volunteers in, and managing, those volunteers' goals, what they were hoping to get out of being a part of the club. We had a finance team, and we reported to a board of directors, or I think they were called the board of advisors, so different business professionals in Guelph who volunteered to help us manage the work that we were doing. And then we had our outgoing exchange and incoming exchange team. So it was basically a little tiny mini nonprofit that was completely volunteer student run on Guelph campus. And so I loved it, and it was a community. I got a lot of experience and exposure to the business world, which led me to study a certificate in business, and then also led me to sort of landing in the fundraising space, because I was so used to connecting, the AIESEC's mission with the corporate partners in the area and with the interested students to go abroad. And so I felt just talking about programming that I was passionate about was something I was really good at, and helped me point myself towards the job market after university ended. I also did in my last semester, so there's a year-long turnover for each role within AIESEC, because they also promote leadership development. So they don't want any one person to be the president for 4 years straight. So I served sort of in each of my roles, and then I actually finished my involvement with AIESEC 1 semester early. And so in my last semester at Guelph, I was like, oh, well, now I've just done 3.5 years of working for the same nonprofit. It's time to try a new club. And I did the Model UN Club with Guelph. So I loved Guelph and MUN. It was super fun. We went to Queens for a conference when I was with them, and I had a blast, and, just kind of got to hack through these mock global crises, and tied in all of my learning from my degree while also networking with a bunch of students similar in age who were interested in, politics and global affairs. And yeah, it was just really cool. So I encourage, you to get involved as much as you feel like you can take on. But I also know that studying takes up a lot of time and effort. And so sometimes feeling like you're stretched in every direction isn't good. And Isaac definitely took up a lot of my free time. So I was trying to find a balance between, volunteer, extracurricular work, schoolwork, and then my personal well-being, my life, my family, my friends. But it was definitely worthwhile getting that experience early, going into job searching later.
I'm actually a member of the MUN team as well, so it's lovely to hear that, there's that connection there.
Awesome. I'm trying to think of who'd be there. Katie. I know Katie.
The president now.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It sounds like, you gained a lot of experience from all your different opportunities on campus. I know once you're out of university, it's time to make yourself stand out in applications and that application process. So what are some tips you would give to international development students to make their resume stand out? And what was that process like with plans specifically?
It's a good question. I think it took me a while to get the hang of cover letters and resume building. I think when I look back to maybe the first 10 that I ever sent out, I'm like, oh, that wasn't the best. So, trial and error, and you learn as you go. But there are some great templates out there. And I also would say and recommend just like running it by different people from different parts of your life. So my parents had a look at my resume, friends who were already hired, who worked in like finance, business, yes, career counselors, and everybody on campus, all the resources there. So I would say run it, do your best at giving a cover letter a go and building out your resume, but run it by people who've had experience working in different areas, and get their input. And then don't necessarily change everything about your first draft, but try and consider some of the insights that those people have given you, and think about how you can reword or restructure things. The other thing I would say is just really look closely at the job you're actually applying to. So what the job description requirements are on the posting, and try to structure your cover letter to sort of check off some of the things that the job posting has listed. So if they talk about, that you'll potentially have to be using your computer skills, then I would make sure that on your resume, there's a portion that lists, I'm great with Excel, Word, PowerPoint, any type of other programming that you've ever had experience with. So you just sort of look into those things and see what the job is asking for, and then tailor each cover letter and resume you submit to really fit that job description.
So on like a similar note, from your experience with jobs in the development field, what kind of experience do employers look for, and what do you think has been your most useful skill or credential in getting these jobs in the development sector?
So again, I'll go back to my experience with Isaac. I think joining an organization early in my undergrad and then having experience to try different things within that same umbrella was really great. So if you look at my LinkedIn profile, you'll see Isaac Canada listed there, and then you'll see that I was, an account manager, and then a VP, and then the president. It shows growth. So that was one thing that I think helped, just having that volunteer experience on my resume. I think also my Girls 20 position, I worked with them for over 4 months in their office I was commuting into Toronto for an unpaid internship every day from Burlington. So it was hard work. And I think employers kind of note that, okay, this person went above and beyond to try and do something in the field, even though there wasn't a paid opportunity there. So that was great. And then I think too, as much experience as you possibly can tie in. And then also conferences were really cool, like to have the opportunity to opt into, I know virtual conferences are kind of what is being offered right now, but even like LinkedIn learning courses and other things that are out there that you can just kind of add to your resume as something that you've done, or a virtual conference that you can join and be a part of. I would say like explore what's out there and try to take advantage, especially, everybody's bummed out that we can't go and do big in-person conferences together. But I actually think virtual conferences become a lot more accessible to people, and virtual learning courses. So see what's out there, see what's offered, and try to add as much as you can while you're going to pad your resume as you go out there.
Yeah, I mean, you just touched on some of the conferences And I was just going to ask, what are some that you would recommend to international development students that would be really helpful for them?
So I would say focus on what you're interested in. So for me, like gender equality was a huge interest of mine. So I looked into, Women Deliver and WXN and all of these other kind of conference opportunities that were out there. And they offer kind of different things for youth and students than they would for just a normal conference goer. So look into what's available. ISIC as an organization ran development conferences. So all of the local committees from different universities in Canada would get together and we would have sessions with like corporate partners that would help sponsor these conferences. So I would look into some of the extracurriculars on campus and see if they do conferencing. I know DECA does that, where they kind of get together and work on business cases and pitching. And not only do you get to go and learn, but you also get to network and meet people from universities across Canada. And some of those relationships that I made at those conference experiences, just beyond people I knew in Guelph, are connections that I now have in the nonprofit space in Toronto and in Canada. And so, how great is it that I get to maybe one day cross paths and work at the same organization as somebody I went to a conference in Vancouver with, So just kind of putting yourself out there. And honestly, ISIC as an organization provided me so much professional development and opportunity. So if you guys don't feel like it's too late, I would definitely look into what they do and what's available. But yeah, I think MUN's really great. And I think there's a lot of other clubs that would offer similar learning experiences. And probably even more so, like I said, it's even more accessible virtually now. So
cool. I can definitely check some of those out. But so what do you think has been like the biggest takeaway that you're learning from your job in Plan International or other jobs that you've had at like War Child Canada or your other volunteer positions?
So I think one of the biggest takeaways and one of the things that keeps me motivated, regardless of the work that I'm actually doing in my day-to-day job, is reminding myself of sort of the why and sort of what the organization's doing as a bigger picture. Again, when I started looking for jobs, I really only Googled organizations that had values and missions that I felt really passionate about. Not to say that a certain organization doing certain work in this specific space isn't important. It is. But my passion and my educational background and my travel experiences really led me to focus on organizations I cared about. And so I think my biggest learning is, regardless of the task that you're necessarily doing at work every day, whether it's cold calling businesses or organizing events for donors to get together to learn about a program, or a really cool concert activation. There's all these different things that you could be tasked with day to day. And sometimes when you only focus on your to-do list, it gets really daunting and tiring and exhausting. But when you can kind of step back and look at the organization you're actually working for and the actual lives that are being changed because of the work that organization's doing, it justifies all those small tasks. And all of the kind of small steps you might have had to take to get to a place where you feel really fortunate and really appreciative for the work that the organization is doing. And knowing that you're a really important part of that, even when you don't feel like it sometimes, without the work that you're doing, even if you're just a summer intern, they needed the support, they brought you on, and you're even if it's just a small part, contributing to such a big thing. So, yeah.
So just to add in another question, Allie, because as a career advisor, especially I will say with the international development cohort that I see, many of them actually want to work internationally. Can you speak to that at all? Because you also said you kind of got into this whole world because you also love to travel. So I feel like that probably really resonates with you. So just curious about if any of your peers that you know of were kind of successful in maybe securing an international position, or if you see with like International Plan Canada, as you progress and grow with the organization, do you see yourself being able to potentially go internationally at some point?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, every organization that works internationally that I've applied to work with, And I've had the chance to have, a follow-up conversation, whether it be a phone interview or an interview in person. That's always a question I ask, is there opportunity to travel? Is there opportunity to experience your programming firsthand? And, what does that look like with your organization? Sometimes the answer is no, there isn't. This is just a 4-month contract and you'll be in Toronto the whole time. But other times, there is sort of the opportunity to go abroad. Before addressing the opportunities at Plan, I do have some friends who've had, who came out of the international development program, who had opportunities to do internship type placements abroad. I had a friend who was working for World Wildlife Fund and had the chance to go over to Africa and work in a couple countries there, actually. And other people who did like small short-term placements, usually like 4 or 6 months at a time, and could go experience internships internationally. So especially if you're maybe moving away from the development fundraising side, and if you're more interested in the programmatic side, there probably would be a lot more opportunity to go to the field and really understand the programs that are happening in those communities. For me, and for the position that I have applied to, and even just not just at Plan, but at War Child, they had this really cool kind of opportunity where they would try and do almost like seat sharing. So if the receptionist at the War Child Canada office wanted to go share a seat with the receptionist at the War Child office in Jordan, she went and traveled there for 3 months, and she's a receptionist, but she still had the opportunity to go experience another country project office and do that. So and then at Plan, for me, in the role and in the department that I've been hired into, the opportunity to travel really comes with accompanying some of our major donors and our major corporate partners. And so though we don't offer voluntourism or, paid trips to the field for our donors, we do, depending at the level that they're giving at, allow them to visit if they plan their own trip to the field. And so it would be a guided sort of accompaniment for them to go experience, if they've been funding for the past 5 years a water project, the opportunity to actually go to that field and meet the community that water project is impacting is really great. And can sort of really steward the relationship with those major donors. So that is an opportunity that in my job interview, I was like, hey, is there any chance I can travel? And they said, maybe someday if we have the right group going at the right time, you could accompany a donor trip to the field and that type of thing. And there's also content collection. So like our media team goes out to the field and takes photos and videos. And there's a million reasons why people travel in international development. And depending on sort of where you land with an organization, and if they have the capacity to allow their staff to experience that, then it's a really great opportunity to grab a hold of.
Awesome. Thank you. Jordan, Emma, any follow-up questions at all? Anything else that's come to mind?
Not right now, no.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
Okay.
Well, we can all share information after, and you guys can always reach out to me if you have any questions or want to get connected in the future.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Awesome. Yeah, so thank you, Allie, on behalf of Career Services, the Experiential Learning Hub, Jordan and Emma, the University of Guelph as a whole. We are very, very appreciative of the time that you dedicated to us today. As you know, it can be, and when you're sitting in Jordan's shoes in that 4th year seat, as you kind of spoke earlier, it's a little, you get a little nervous around this time of year. And Jordan, I always kind of say those nerves you're feeling, those same feelings can be excitement. So really just try and get excited about those opportunities and possibilities that exist out there. So thank you so much, Allie.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me to chat today. And yeah, I would say the same thing that Jana said, just get excited. There's, it might take a while to land the perfect opportunity, but there's just so much to learn and so many great leaders in this space to learn from. So just really take advantage of that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great, thanks.